Veteran and his dog walked in the Rocky Mountains. What was hidden in the snow changed everything. This is an incredible true story that will leave you speechless, a tale of survival, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a veteran and his service dog that saved multiple lives in the Colorado wilderness. Before we dive into this heart-stopping adventure that unfolded in the frozen peaks of the Rocky Mountains, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell. You won't believe what one service dog discovered buried in the snow and how it changed an entire community forever. Get ready for a story that proves heroes can emerge from the most unexpected circumstances. The November wind cut through Jackson Mitchell's thermal jacket as he adjusted his backpack at the Emerald Lake Trailhead in Rocky Mountain National Park. Even after 4 years back from Iraq, the thin mountain air still reminded him that he was alive, that he'd made it home when so many hadn't. Beside him, Rex, his golden retriever service dog, sat patiently, his thick coat ruffling in the wind, breath visible in small puffs that dissipated into the cold Colorado morning. Jackson hadn't planned this hike. He'd woken at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat from another nightmare about Fallujah. Rex already pressed against him, providing the deep pressure therapy that helped ground him in reality. Unable to return to sleep, he decided to drive the 2 hours from his cabin outside Boulder to the park, hoping the physical exertion would exhaust his body enough to quiet his mind. The parking lot was nearly empty. Most sane people wouldn't attempt a mountain hike with a storm system moving in, but Jackson had checked the weather carefully. The storm wasn't supposed to hit until evening, giving him a solid 8 hours to complete the 12-mile loop trail. He needed this, needed the solitude, the challenge, the reminder that his body could still do remarkable things, even if his mind sometimes betrayed him. Rex wore his service vest marked with patches identifying him as a working dog, though up here in the wilderness, there were few people to educate about not petting him. The dog also wore specially designed boots to protect his paws from the sharp ice and rock, and a GPS tracker, Jackson's concession to his sister Emma's concerns about his solo hikes. "Just you and me today, buddy," Jackson murmured, checking Rex's gear one more time. The dog's tail wagged slightly, his intelligent brown eyes focused on Jackson's face, reading his emotional state with an accuracy that still amazed him after 2 years together. They set off on the trail, Jackson's boots crunching through the thin layer of fresh snow that had fallen overnight. The familiar rhythm of hiking soothed him. Left foot, right foot, breathe, repeat. Rex walked beside him, occasionally ranging ahead to investigate interesting smells, but always returning to Jackson's side, maintaining the invisible tether between them. The trail wound upward through stands of lodgepole pines and aspens, their bare branches creating intricate patterns against the gray sky. Jackson had hiked this trail dozens of times since moving to Colorado, finding peace in its predictability. He knew every switchback, every stream crossing, every viewpoint. It was one of the few places where his hypervigilance, constantly scanning for threats, felt appropriate rather than paranoid. 3 miles in, as they approached the steeper section leading to Emerald Lake, Rex suddenly stopped. His entire body went rigid, nose lifted to the wind, a low whine escaping his throat. This wasn't his typical alert for Jackson's anxiety or an approaching panic attack. This was something else, something Rex had been trained to detect in his earlier training, before being matched with Jackson. Human scent, distress, danger. "What is it, Rex?" Jackson asked, immediately on alert. He scanned the trail ahead, the surrounding forest, looking for any sign of what had caught Rex's attention. The wind had picked up, bringing with it the metallic taste of incoming snow. The storm was moving in faster than predicted. Rex pulled toward the left off the main trail, his nose working frantically. Jackson hesitated. Leaving the trail in potential storm conditions was dangerous, but Rex's instincts had saved him more than once. In Iraq, dogs like Rex had detected IEDs, hidden combatants, and wounded soldiers. That training didn't just disappear. Jackson checked his GPS unit, marking their current position, then followed Rex off the trail. They pushed through a dense thicket of young pines, branches heavy with snow dumping their loads as they passed. Rex was moving with purpose now, not tracking a wandering scent, but heading toward a specific destination. 20 minutes off-trail, the trees opened into a small clearing. At first, Jackson saw nothing unusual, just snow-covered rocks and fallen logs. But Rex was pulling harder now, whining urgently, heading toward what looked like a mound of fresh snow against a large boulder. As they got closer, Jackson's blood ran cold. Protruding from the snow was a small hand wearing a bright purple mitten. "Jesus Christ," Jackson breathed, immediately dropping to his knees and beginning to dig. Rex joined him, his powerful paws moving snow efficiently. Within seconds, they'd uncovered a child, a girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing a pink winter coat, unconscious but breathing. Jackson's combat medic training kicked in immediately. He checked her pulse, weak but steady. Her skin was pale, lips tinged blue from hypothermia. She was alive but barely. He needed to get her warm and fast. "Good boy, Rex. Search," he commanded, wondering if there were others. Rex immediately began circling the area, nose to the ground. Jackson pulled out his satellite phone. Cell service was non-existent up here and called for emergency rescue. "Rocky Mountain Search and Rescue, what's your emergency?" "This is Jackson Mitchell. I'm approximately 3 miles up the Emerald Lake Trail, about 20 minutes west off trail. GPS coordinates..." He rattled off the numbers from his device. "I've found an unconscious child, female, approximately 7 years old, severe hypothermia. My service dog detected her buried in snow. Jackson, this is Coordinator Martinez. We've been searching for a missing family since yesterday. Parents and 3 children. They were camping and got caught in an unexpected snow squall. Are there others?" Jackson's heart sank. 3 children. "My dog is searching now. How long until you can get here?" "Weather's deteriorating fast. Helicopter can't fly in these conditions. Ground team is at least 3 hours out, maybe more if the storm hits hard." 3 hours. The girl might not last that long. Copy that. "I'm beginning emergency treatment for hypothermia. Jackson, be advised the family was last seen near Emerald Lake. 2 adults, 3 children, ages 7, 10, and 14. Jackson ended the call and focused on the immediate crisis. He pulled out his emergency bivy sack, the space blanket designed to reflect body heat, but he knew from his training that the most effective treatment for severe hypothermia was skin-to-skin contact, gradual rewarming. Rex's sharp bark interrupted his thoughts. The dog was 20 feet away, pawing frantically at another snow mound. Jackson carefully wrapped the girl in the bivy sack, then rushed to where Rex was digging. Another child, a boy, older, maybe the 10-year-old. This one was conscious but barely, mumbling incoherently. "Hey buddy, I'm here to help," Jackson said, excavating him from the snow. "What's your name?" "David," the boy stammered through chattering teeth. My family. We're going to find them," Jackson promised, even as his mind raced through the grim calculations. 5 people missing, 2 found, Rex still searching. The snow was falling harder now, visibility dropping. He dragged David over to where his sister lay, wrapping them together in the bivy sack, trying to preserve what little heat they had. David's eyes focused on his sister. "Lily?" he whispered. "She's alive," Jackson assured him. "Can you tell me where your parents and brother are?" David tried to point, his hand shaking uncontrollably. Dad tried to build shelter by the big rocks. Mom and Tyler, they went for help yesterday. Dad said to stay together, but the snow, we got separated." Rex was already moving in the direction David had indicated, Jackson following while keeping an eye on the 2 children. The big rocks turned out to be a formation about 50 yards away, where someone had attempted to build a snow cave. Rex went straight to it, barking urgently. Inside, Jackson found a man, unconscious, showing severe signs of hypothermia and what looked like a head injury, dried blood on his temple. This had to be the father. Jackson checked his vitals. Alive, but in critical condition. The man had given his coat to his children. He was wearing only a fleece and jeans. 3 found, Jackson reported via satellite phone. Adult male, critical condition, possible head trauma. 2 children, severe hypothermia, but conscious or semi-conscious. Copy. What about the mother and oldest child? Still searching. Dog is tracking. The tactical part of Jackson's mind was already running scenarios. He couldn't move 3 hypothermic victims by himself. The storm was worsening. He could barely see 10 feet now. He needed to create a warming station, stabilize them until help arrived. Rex returned, snow-caked in his fur, and pulled at Jackson's sleeve. The dog led him another 30 yards through increasingly deep snow to a steep slope. There, partially buried in what looked like a small avalanche, were 2 more figures. The mother was curled around her oldest son, her body shielding him from the worst of the snow. Neither was conscious. Jackson's heart sank as he checked for pulses. The boy, Tyler, had one, weak but present. The mother. Jackson checked again, then again. Nothing. Her skin was ice cold, her body stiff. She'd been gone for hours, maybe since yesterday. She'd died protecting her son. "Rex, help," Jackson commanded, and together they carefully excavated Tyler from his mother's frozen embrace. The teenager was barely alive, his breathing so shallow, Jackson had to put his ear to the boy's chest to confirm he was breathing. The situation was critical. 4 survivors, all in severe hypothermia, 1 deceased, and Jackson alone in a building blizzard with rescue hours away. In Iraq, he'd faced impossible situations, had to make decisions about who to treat first, who had the best chance of survival. He'd hoped never to face such choices again, but hope was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. Jackson dragged Tyler back to where the others were, his own body starting to shake from exertion and cold. He needed to build a shelter, get them all warm or they'd all be dead before rescue arrived. Using his emergency supplies and what he could gather from the family's scattered camping gear, Jackson began building a modified snow cave against the rock formation where he'd found the father. Rex helped, his powerful body moving snow while Jackson structured the shelter. Inside, he laid out every piece of insulation he could find. Sleeping bags from the family's campsite, his own emergency blankets, pine boughs for ground cover. One by one, he moved the victims into the shelter. The father, who David had identified as Robert, was the hardest to move, his large frame dead weight. Jackson's back screamed in protest, old injuries from an IED blast making themselves known, but he pushed through the pain. Inside the cramped shelter, Jackson arranged the family together, their body heat combining. He knew he needed to warm them gradually. Too fast, and the cold blood from their extremities would rush to their hearts, potentially causing cardiac arrest. It was a delicate balance. Rex curled around the children, his thick fur and warm body another source of heat. The dog seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, his usual playfulness replaced by serious focus. Jackson used his portable stove to heat water, carefully giving the conscious ones warm, not hot drinks. David was the most alert, able to tell Jackson more about what had happened. "We were camping," David explained, his voice stronger as he warmed, "for Thanksgiving break. Dad loves winter camping, but the storm came so fast the tent collapsed. Mom and Tyler went to find the trail to get help, but they didn't come back. Dad tried to build a shelter, but he hit his head on a rock when he fell. Lily and we tried to stay with him, but we got so cold. I don't remember anything after that." Jackson checked his watch, an hour since he'd called for rescue. 2 more to go if they were lucky. The storm was howling now, the shelter entrance already half blocked with snow despite his efforts to keep it clear. He monitored the victims constantly, checking pulses, watching for signs of improvement or deterioration. Lily remained unconscious, but her breathing was steadier. Tyler was in the worst shape, his body having been exposed the longest. Robert stirred occasionally, mumbling incoherently about his wife. Jackson couldn't bring himself to tell them about their mother yet, not when they were fighting for their own lives. Rex suddenly lifted his head, ears perked. Through the storm, Jackson heard it too, the distant thrum of an engine. Not a helicopter, the weather was too bad for that, but snowmobiles. He grabbed a flare from his pack, pushing through the snow accumulated at the shelter entrance. The world outside was white chaos, but he fired the flare anyway, its red light cutting through the storm. Within minutes, shapes materialized from the blizzard, search and rescue team members on snowmobiles, pulling rescue sleds. Jackson had never been so happy to see other people. "Jesus, Mitchell," the lead rescuer, a woman named Sarah, said as she surveyed the scene. "5 victims? How the hell did you find them all?" "Rex found them," Jackson said simply. "He's trained for this." The rescue team worked with practiced efficiency, loading the survivors onto insulated sleds, starting IV lines for warming fluids, preparing for transport. Jackson had to tell them about the mother, had to lead them to where she lay. Sarah's face was grim as she radioed for an additional team to recover the body. "You saved 4 lives today," she told Jackson. "That family would all be dead if you and your dog hadn't been here." But Jackson was thinking about the one he couldn't save, the mother who died protecting her son. In Iraq, he'd learned that you couldn't save everyone, but the lesson never got easier. Rex pressed against his leg, whining softly, and Jackson realized he was shaking, not from cold, but from adrenaline crash, the PTSD symptoms threatening to overwhelm him. But he couldn't fall apart now. The family still needed him. He rode with the rescue team back to the trailhead, where ambulances waited. The storm had made helicopter evacuation impossible, so the victims would be transported by ambulance to the nearest hospital in Estes Park. "I'm coming with them," Jackson said. Not a request, but a statement. Sarah looked like she wanted to argue, but saw something in his face that stopped her. "Rex, too?" "Rex especially." The next hours blurred together. The emergency room at Estes Park Medical Center was controlled chaos as the medical team worked on the family. Jackson stayed in the waiting room, Rex at his feet, both of them covered in melting snow and mud. Other families there for routine emergencies stared at them, but Jackson barely noticed. Emma arrived 2 hours later, having driven through the storm from Denver, where she worked as a nurse. "Jackie," she said, using his childhood nickname, wrapping him in a fierce hug. "I saw the news." "You saved a whole family?" "Not the whole family," Jackson said quietly, and told her about the mother. Emma, who'd seen plenty of death in her own career, just held him tighter. "You saved who you could. That's all anyone can do." Dr. Patricia Chen, the lead emergency physician, finally emerged after what felt like days, but had only been 4 hours. "Mr. Mitchell, the family is asking for you." She led him to the ICU, where the family was together in one room, a special arrangement given the circumstances. Robert was awake, bandaged head and IV lines, but alert. The children were all conscious, though Tyler was on oxygen and still looked dangerously pale. "You saved my children," Robert said, tears streaming down his face. "The rescue team told me. If you hadn't found them when you did, another hour and—" He couldn't finish. Jackson didn't know what to say. How do you respond to that? How do you tell a man you're sorry you couldn't save his wife too? But it was David who spoke up. "Where's Mom?" The room went silent. Robert's face crumbled. He'd been told, but the children hadn't. "Kids," Robert said, his voice breaking. Mom didn't make it. She died protecting Tyler." The sound of the children's grief was devastating. Lily, the youngest, didn't understand at first, kept asking when Mommy was coming. David tried to be strong but broke down in his father's arms. Tyler, when he fully understood that his mother had died saving him, became hysterical, requiring sedation. Jackson and Rex stood in the corner, witnessing the family's raw grief. Rex whined softly, pulling toward the children, wanting to comfort them. Jackson let him go, and the dog went to each child in turn, letting them cry into his fur. "She was the strongest person I knew," Robert said through his tears. "Of course she died protecting our son. That's who she was." Jackson learned the full story over the following days as he visited the family during their recovery. Robert and Michelle Turner had been married 15 years. They were experienced campers, but the storm had come out of nowhere, not in the forecast, dropping 2 feet of snow in just hours. Their tent had collapsed in the wind. Michelle and Tyler had tried to hike out for help, while Robert built a shelter for the younger children. But the whiteout conditions had disoriented them. They'd walked in circles before Tyler collapsed. Michelle had used her own body to shield him from the snow, staying with him until the end. "She would have known she was dying," Robert said during one conversation. "The cold, it would have been peaceful at the end, but she wouldn't have left Tyler, not ever." The story made national news. Hero veteran and service dog save family in blizzard. Jackson hated the attention, declined all interview requests. But Rex became something of a celebrity, his photo, snow-covered and noble, appearing everywhere. What the media didn't cover was the aftermath. Jackson's PTSD, triggered by finding the deceased mother, by the life and death decisions he'd had to make, spiraled. He couldn't sleep without seeing Michelle Turner's frozen body, couldn't close his eyes without being back in that blizzard, making the same calculations he'd made in Iraq about who could be saved. Dr. Simon Martinez, his psychiatrist at the VA, increased his medication and therapy sessions. "You're experiencing moral injury," Dr. Martinez explained. "It's common in veterans who've had to make impossible choices. You saved 4 lives, but your mind is fixated on the one you couldn't save." "Her kids needed her," Jackson said. "Tyler's 14. He's going to blame himself for his mother's death for the rest of his life. Or he's going to honor her sacrifice by living a life worthy of it," Dr. Martinez suggested. "You can't control how he processes this. You can only control your own healing." Rex seemed to understand Jackson was struggling. The dog became even more attentive, waking him from nightmares more frequently, performing deep pressure therapy without being commanded, forcing Jackson to maintain routines when all he wanted was to stay in bed. 2 weeks after the rescue, Jackson received a call from Robert Turner. "We're being discharged tomorrow," Robert said. "The kids want to see you and Rex before we go home. Would you come?" Jackson almost said no. Seeing the family meant confronting his failure to save Michelle. But Rex, hearing Robert's voice through the phone, was already at the door, tail wagging. "We'll be there," Jackson said. The reunion was emotional. Tyler hugged Jackson for a long minute, whispering "thank you" over and over. Lily had drawn a picture of Rex with a superhero cape. David presented Jackson with a challenge coin his grandfather had given him. "Grandpa was in Vietnam," David explained. "He said this kept him safe. I want you to have it." But it was Robert who surprised Jackson the most. "I know you think you failed because you couldn't save Michelle," Robert said quietly while the kids played with Rex. "But I want you to understand something. Michelle would be so grateful to you. You saved our children. You gave them a chance to grow up, to live their lives. That's all she would have wanted." He pulled out his phone, showing Jackson a photo of Michelle, a vibrant woman with kind eyes and a bright smile, surrounded by her children at what looked like a birthday party. "This was 2 weeks ago," Robert said. "Tyler's birthday. She was so proud of him, of all of them. She used to say that being a mother was her greatest adventure. She died doing what she loved most, protecting her children. There's honor in that." Jackson found himself crying, something he hadn't done since coming home from Iraq. The tears came hard and fast, years of suppressed grief pouring out. Robert just sat with him, a hand on his shoulder, two men who understood loss in different but profound ways. "We're starting a foundation," Robert said when Jackson had composed himself. "The Michelle Turner Foundation for Wilderness Safety. We want to provide GPS beacons for families who camp, fund search and rescue training, maybe train more dogs like Rex. Would you help us?" Jackson looked at Rex, who was now lying with all 3 Turner children piled on top of him, all of them laughing despite their grief. This was what his mother had always told him, that purpose could come from pain, that tragedy could be transformed into something meaningful. "Yes," Jackson said, "we'll help." If you're moved by this story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell to hear more incredible tales of heroism and survival. This story is far from over, and you'll want to follow what happens next with the Turner family and the amazing work that came from this tragedy. The weeks that followed transformed Jackson's isolated life in ways he never expected. The cabin that had been his retreat from the world became a hub of activity as the Michelle Turner Foundation took shape. Robert threw himself into the work with the intensity of a man trying to outrun grief, and Jackson understood that coping mechanism all too well. They worked in Jackson's living room, papers spread across the coffee table, Rex supervising from his bed by the fireplace. Emma, Jackson's sister, joined them, using her medical background to develop wilderness first aid curricula. Even Dr. Martinez from the VA got involved, recognizing that the project was therapeutic for Jackson. "We need to focus on prevention first," Robert said during one planning session, his business background evident. He was a software engineer, used to solving complex problems with systematic approaches. "GPS beacons are good, but education is better." Jackson contributed his military perspective on survival situations. "In combat," we had a saying, "prior planning prevents piss-poor performance. Same applies to wilderness safety." The children visited often, their presence both healing and challenging for Jackson. Tyler especially sought him out, the guilt of his mother's sacrifice weighing heavily on the teenager. "I should have stayed with Dad," Tyler said one afternoon, sitting on Jackson's porch while Rex lay between them. "If I hadn't gone with Mom, then you'd likely both be dead, and your dad would have lost a wife and a son," Jackson said firmly. He'd learned this lesson in Iraq, watching soldiers tear themselves apart with survivors' guilt. "Your mom made a choice. Honor it by living, not by punishing yourself." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Is that what you do? With the soldiers you couldn't save?" The question hit hard. Jackson had never thought of it that way, but the kid was right. Every day he chose to get up, to keep going. He was honoring his fallen brothers and sisters. "I try," Jackson admitted. "Some days are better than others." Rex seemed to sense the heavy emotion, performing his trained behavior of interrupting negative thought patterns by nudging his tennis ball toward Tyler. The teenager threw it, and Rex bounded after it with enthusiasm that seemed impossible for a trained service dog. "He knows when to be serious and when to play," Jackson explained. "Dogs understand that life has to continue even after loss." Lily had attached herself to Rex completely. The 7-year-old would arrive at Jackson's cabin and immediately look for the dog, spending hours grooming him, teaching him tricks, though Rex already knew them all, and reading to him from her picture books. "Rex likes this one," she announced one day, holding up a book about a brave dog who saves the day. "It's about him." David, the middle child, was quieter, more introspective. He'd started having nightmares about being buried in snow, waking up gasping for air. Robert was considering therapy, but David resisted. "Maybe he could talk to Rex," Jackson suggested one evening. "Sometimes it's easier to tell a dog your problems than a person." It worked. David would sit with Rex for hours, whispering his fears to the patient dog. Rex would listen, occasionally licking David's face when the boy cried, providing the uncomplicated comfort that only animals could offer. The foundation officially launched in January, 2 months after the rescue. The press conference was held at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, the historic building providing a backdrop that attracted media attention. Jackson had tried to stay in the background, but Robert insisted he and Rex be on stage. "This foundation exists because Jackson Mitchell and Rex were in the right place at the right time," Robert told the assembled crowd. "But more than that, they were prepared and willing to help. That's what we want to create, a network of people ready and able to save lives in the wilderness." The Foundation's first initiative was providing subsidized GPS beacons to low-income families who enjoyed camping. The devices could send emergency signals from anywhere, potentially preventing situations like the Turners had faced. But the program Jackson was most proud of was the Service Dog Wilderness Training Initiative. Working with local service dog organizations, they developed a supplementary training program that taught service dogs basic search and rescue skills. "These dogs are already incredible," Jackson explained to a group of veteran handlers at the first training session. "We're just adding another tool to their toolkit." Rex became the demonstration dog, showing other service animals how to detect human scent in snow, how to alert to distress, how to help clear snow with their paws. Watching Rex work with other dogs, teaching them in his calm, patient way, filled Jackson with pride he hadn't felt since leaving the military. One of the handlers was Maria Santos, a Marine veteran with a black lab named Duke. She'd lost her left leg to an IED and struggled with PTSD similar to Jackson's. "I never thought Duke could do more than he already does," Maria said after watching Rex demonstrate. "He saves me every day just by being there." "Now he might save others too," Jackson replied. "These dogs have more capacity for heroism than we give them credit for." Maria and Duke became regulars at the training sessions. Jackson found himself looking forward to seeing her, their shared military experience creating an easy camaraderie. Duke and Rex became friends, playing together after training sessions while Jackson and Maria talked. "You ever think about how different our lives would be without the war?" Maria asked one day, as they watched the dogs wrestle in the snow. "Every day," Jackson admitted. "But then I think about all the people I've been able to help because of what I learned there. It's a hell of a price, but maybe some good can come from it." March brought an unexpected challenge. The Turners' story had inspired other families who'd lost loved ones in wilderness accidents to reach out. The foundation was overwhelmed with requests for help, for resources, for support. Robert was burning out, the constant reminder of other families' tragedies keeping his own grief fresh. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," Robert confided to Jackson during one particularly difficult week. They'd just received news of another family caught in an avalanche, 2 children orphaned. "You don't have to do it alone," Jackson reminded him. "That's what the foundation is about, creating a community." They brought in help. Sarah Chen from Search and Rescue joined the board, bringing her expertise and connections. Dr. Martinez offered to run support groups for families who'd experienced wilderness tragedies. Emma took over the medical training programs. The Turner children were healing too, each in their own way. Tyler had started volunteering with local scout troops, teaching wilderness safety with a passion born from personal experience. David joined the Junior Search and Rescue program, channeling his trauma into purpose. Lily, resilient as only children could be, had started telling everyone that her mommy was an angel who saved Tyler and now watched over other families in the mountains. "She's not wrong," Robert said, tears in his eyes, as he watched Lily explain this to another child at a foundation event. The one-year anniversary of Michelle's death approached with the weight of an incoming storm. The family planned a memorial hike to the spot where she died, to place a marker. They invited Jackson and Rex to join them. The November day was clear and cold, so different from that fateful storm. The trail was busy with other hikers, but they found solitude at the site. Robert had commissioned a small bronze plaque that would be affixed to the rock formation. Michelle Turner, 1978-2023, Mother, Hero, Guardian Angel. Her love lives on in those she saved. Each family member said something. Tyler read a poem he'd written. David played a song on his harmonica that Michelle had taught him. Lily left a drawing of the family, including Rex and Jackson, under a rainbow. Robert spoke last. Michelle always said the mountains were where she felt closest to God. Now she's part of them forever. Every time we help another family stay safe, every time a dog like Rex saves a life, Michelle's sacrifice means something. Jackson hadn't planned to speak, but found himself stepping forward. I didn't know Michelle in life, but I've come to know her through all of you. Her courage, her love, her sacrifice, they've changed not just your lives, but mine too. Rex and I were just the instruments. Michelle's love for her children. That's what saved you all. Rex seemed to understand the solemnity of the moment. He sat perfectly still, his head bowed as if in prayer. As they hiked back down, Tyler fell into step beside Jackson. The teenager had grown 3 inches in the past year, was starting to look more like a young man than a boy. I've decided what I want to do, Tyler announced. After college, I want to be a paramedic, maybe work with search and rescue, like you did in the Army. It's hard work, Jackson warned. You'll see things that stay with you. I already have, Tyler replied, wise beyond his years. Might as well make something useful from it. That evening, the Turners invited Jackson and Emma for dinner at their home in Fort Collins. It was the first time Jackson had seen where they lived, the house Michelle had helped decorate, the life she'd been part of. Photos of her were everywhere, but not in a shrine-like way. They were part of the natural decoration. Michelle smiling from family vacations, birthday parties, quiet moments caught on camera. The house felt warm, lived in, healing. We're moving forward, Robert explained, as they ate Michelle's famous lasagna recipe, Lily insisting she'd helped make it. Not moving on, never that, but forward. She would have wanted that. After dinner, the kids showed Jackson Michelle's garden in the backyard, dormant now for winter but with markers showing what would grow in spring. Mom planted these bulbs last year, David said, pointing to a section marked tulips. They'll bloom in April. Life persisting, Jackson murmured, even after winter. Rex was playing with the family's new addition, a golden retriever puppy named Hope that they'd adopted from a rescue. We weren't going to get another dog, Robert admitted, but the kids needed something to nurture, to love. Hope helped them heal. The puppy was trying to climb on Rex, who bore it with patient dignity, occasionally nudging her away when she got too rambunctious. Watching them, Jackson thought about the various forms healing took. Sometimes it was therapy and medication, sometimes it was purpose and community, sometimes it was a puppy named Hope. May brought a significant milestone. The Michelle Turner Foundation had raised enough funds to sponsor the training of 5 full search and rescue dogs, puppies who would be raised specifically for wilderness rescue work. The ceremony to introduce the puppies to their handlers was held at the same spot where Jackson had found the Turners. It was a beautiful spring day, wildflowers beginning to bloom, the snow reduced to patches in the shadows. The 5 puppies, all different breeds selected for their specific strengths, tumbled around the clearing where tragedy had struck, their joy a counterpoint to the solemnity of the location. Each puppy was named for a virtue: hope, courage, faith, grace, and honor. Tyler had chosen the names, saying they represented what his mother had taught them. These dogs will save lives, Sarah Chen announced to the gathered crowd. But more than that, they represent the transformation of tragedy into purpose. The Turner family could have let their loss destroy them. Instead, they chose to ensure other families don't suffer the same fate. Jackson was assigned to help train Courage, a German Shepherd puppy with Rex's same intelligent eyes and steady temperament. Watching Rex teach the puppy, patient and thorough, Jackson felt a sense of continuity, of legacy. Maria Santos was there with Duke, having become a regular trainer for the foundation. She'd also become something more to Jackson, their friendship evolving into something deeper. They hadn't put a label on it yet, both too scarred by their pasts to rush, but there was something there, growing slowly like the wildflowers around them. "You ever think you'd find purpose like this?" Maria asked as they watched the puppies play. "Never," Jackson admitted. "I thought my purpose died in Iraq." But maybe purpose isn't something you find once. Maybe it's something you keep discovering. The summer was busy with training, fundraising, and growth. The foundation had partnered with National Park Service to provide safety briefings at trailheads. They distributed over 500 GPS beacons. The service dog program had expanded to 3 states, but the real measure of success came in the stories. A family in Wyoming whose GPS beacon had brought rescue when their son broke his leg miles from any trail. A service dog in Montana who detected an elderly hiker with dementia who'd wandered off trail. A group of teenagers in New Mexico who'd avoided tragedy because they'd attended one of Tyler's wilderness safety presentations. Each save was a victory, a validation of Michelle's sacrifice. August brought news that changed everything. Robert had been offered a position with a tech company in Seattle, a dream job he'd applied for before Michelle's death. "I don't know what to do," he told Jackson as they sat on the cabin porch, watching the kids play with Rex and Hope in the yard. "Part of me thinks we need a fresh start, away from the memories. But this place, the foundation, you and Emma and everyone, you're our family now." Jackson understood the dilemma. After Iraq, he'd wanted to run too, to find somewhere the memories couldn't reach. But memories traveled with you, he'd learned. It was the connections, the purpose, the community that made them bearable. "Whatever you decide, the foundation continues," Jackson assured him. "We'll make it work." The Turners ultimately decided to stay, Robert taking a remote position with the Seattle company. "Michelle is buried here," he explained. "This is where we became who we are now. We can't leave that." The second anniversary of the rescue approached with less dread than the first. The family was stronger now, scarred but healing. The foundation had helped dozens of families. The wilderness that had taken Michelle had also become a place of renewal and purpose. Jackson and Maria had made their relationship official, their shared understanding of trauma and recovery, creating a bond deeper than either had expected to find again. Duke and Rex had become inseparable, the 2 dogs working as a team during training sessions. "You saved us," Robert said during the anniversary memorial hike. This time, dozens joined them, families the foundation had helped, search and rescue team members, the community that had formed around their shared mission. "We saved each other," Jackson corrected, looking at the assembled group. "That's what humans do. We save each other." The bronze plaque for Michelle now had company, small stones left by hikers who'd heard the story, flowers from families who'd been helped by the foundation, notes from children who'd attended safety programs. Tyler, now 16 and confident, spoke to the group. "My mom died saving me. For a long time I couldn't live with that, but Jackson taught me something important. We honor the dead by living fully, by helping others, by making sure their sacrifice means something. The Michelle Turner Foundation isn't just about wilderness safety. It's about turning the worst thing that can happen into something that helps others." Lily, now 9, added her own perspective with the clarity only children possessed. "Mommy became part of the mountain, and now she helps protect everyone who comes here." As the ceremony ended and people began the hike down, Jackson hung back with Rex. The dog was getting older, moving a bit slower, his muzzle showing grey. But his spirit remained strong, his dedication unwavering. "Good boy," Jackson whispered, scratching Rex's ears. "You started all this, you know. If you hadn't found them." Rex leaned against Jackson's leg, his warmth comforting in the cool mountain air. Together they looked out over the valley below, the peaks stretching endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, other families were hiking, camping, exploring. Some would face emergencies. But now, thanks to the foundation, more would come home safely. The following spring brought unexpected recognition. The foundation was nominated for a National Humanitarian Award. The ceremony would be in Washington, D.C., with the president presenting the award. "I can't," Robert said immediately when told. "That kind of attention with Michelle not here." "She is here," Emma said firmly. She'd become like an aunt to the Turner children, her nursing skills and warm heart making her indispensable to the family. "She's in every life saved, every family that goes home safely." They all went to Washington, the Turners, Jackson and Maria, Emma, even Dr. Martinez. Rex and Duke were granted special permission to attend as service animals. The ceremony was held in the Rose Garden, the spring flowers in full bloom. The president spoke about American resilience, about turning tragedy into purpose. When she called them forward to receive the award, it was Tyler who accepted it on behalf of the foundation. "This award belongs to my mother, Michelle Turner," Tyler said, his voice strong and clear. "She died saving me, the ultimate sacrifice a parent can make. But her death wasn't the end of her story. Through the foundation, through people like Jackson Mitchell and his dog Rex, through everyone who's joined our mission, my mother continues to save lives every day. That's her true legacy. Not how she died, but how her love continues to protect others." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Even the typically stoic Secret Service agents seemed moved. The photo that made the front pages nationwide showed the whole group on stage. The Turner family, Jackson and Maria, Emma, Rex and Duke, sitting perfectly at attention. But what the photo couldn't capture was the invisible presence they all felt. Michelle somehow there in spirit, her sacrifice having created something beautiful from unimaginable loss. The flight home was quiet, each person processing the magnitude of what they'd built. As the plane flew over the Rocky Mountains, Tyler pointed out the window. "There," he said, "that's where it happened." From 30,000 feet, the mountains looked peaceful, majestic, indifferent to human drama. But Jackson knew better. Those mountains had taken Michelle Turner, but they'd also been the catalyst for something extraordinary. "Your mom would be so proud," Jackson told Tyler. "She is proud," Tyler corrected, with a confidence that surprised Jackson. "I can feel it." If you've been touched by this incredible story of loss, survival, and redemption, please share it with others who need to hear it. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and remember that heroes come in many forms. Sometimes they're veterans with PTSD. Sometimes they're mothers who give everything for their children. And sometimes they're dogs who know when someone needs saving. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Remember, we all have the capacity to transform our worst moments into something that helps others. Until next time, stay safe out there. The story could end there with triumph and transformation. But life, as Jackson had learned, didn't wrap up neatly. It continued with its daily challenges and small victories. Rex developed cancer the following year, a devastating diagnosis for Jackson. The dog who'd saved so many, who'd been Jackson's anchor through his darkest moments, was dying. The Turner children were devastated. They visited Rex daily during his treatment, reading to him, bringing him special treats, approved by the vet, simply lying beside him when he was too tired to play. "Is he in pain?" Lily asked one afternoon, her small hand gentle on Rex's head. "No," Jackson assured her, though his heart was breaking. "He's tired, but not in pain. The medication makes sure of that." Rex fought with the same quiet dignity he'd shown his entire life, but by autumn it was clear he was losing the battle. The vet suggested it was time. Jackson couldn't make the decision alone. He gathered everyone who'd loved Rex, the Turners, Maria, Emma, even some of the families Rex had helped save. They held a celebration of Rex's life at Jackson's cabin, the dog lying on his favorite bed by the fireplace, tail still wagging weakly as each person said goodbye. Tyler had written a letter to Rex, which he read aloud. "Dear Rex, you saved my life, but more than that, you saved my family. You showed us that heroes don't need to speak to change the world. Thank you for every wag, every kiss, every moment of comfort you gave us. You're the best dog who ever lived." David played Rex's favorite song on his harmonica. Lily had made a collar of wildflowers. "For your journey," she explained solemnly. Robert spoke about how Rex had not just saved their bodies from the cold, but had helped save their spirits from despair. Maria talked about how watching Rex work had inspired her own service dog training. When it was time, Jackson held Rex as the vet administered the medication. The dog's eyes, still bright with love, looked into Jackson's one last time before closing peacefully. "Good boy," Jackson whispered. "The very best boy." They buried Rex in the mountains he'd loved, near the spot where he'd saved the Turners. The entire search and rescue team attended, along with dozens of families whose lives Rex had touched. A marker was placed. Rex, service dog, hero, friend. He knew what we needed before we did. The loss of Rex sent Jackson into a spiral. Without his constant companion, his PTSD symptoms worsened. But this time, he wasn't alone. The Turner children visited daily, bringing hope, now a trained therapy dog to provide comfort. Maria and Duke moved in temporarily, Duke taking on Rex's role of alerting to Jackson's anxiety. "Rex wouldn't want you to give up," Tyler said during one particularly bad day. "He'd want you to keep helping others, to keep training dogs, to keep going." Slowly, Jackson began to heal. The foundation established the Rex Award, given annually to service dogs who went above and beyond their training to save lives. The first recipient was Duke, Maria's dog, who detected a lost child during a training exercise, a child who wasn't even part of the exercise, but had wandered away from a nearby campground. Jackson began training a new service dog, a golden retriever named Chance that Rex had helped train as a puppy. Chance was different from Rex, more playful, less serious, but equally devoted. Jackson had to learn to love again, to trust again, to bond again. It was terrifying and healing in equal measure. 3 years after the rescue, Tyler left for college, pre-med with a focus on emergency medicine. His application essay about his mother's sacrifice and the foundation's work earned him a full scholarship. "I'll be back," he promised Jackson at his going-away party. "This is my home, my mission. I just need to learn how to do more." David, now in high school, had become the foundation's youth ambassador, speaking at schools across the state. His quiet intensity and personal story made him incredibly effective at reaching young people. Lily, 12 now, had started writing a children's book about Rex, illustrated with her own drawings. "So kids will know that dogs are heroes too," she explained. Robert had found love again. Sarah from Search and Rescue. It had been slow, careful, respectful of Michelle's memory. But Michelle's sister, visiting for Thanksgiving, had given her blessing. Michelle would want you happy. She'd want the kids to see that life goes on, that love is possible after loss. Jackson was Sarah's best man at the Quiet Mountain wedding. The Turner children stood with Sarah, not as replacements for their mother, but as additions to her life. Hope and Chance served as ring bearers, carrying the rings in special pouches on their collars. During his speech, Jackson said, "This family has taught me that grief and joy can coexist, that loss doesn't negate the possibility of future happiness. Michelle's death brought us all together, but it's the choice to keep showing up, to keep caring, that's made us a family." The foundation continued to grow. By the 5th anniversary of the rescue, it had helped save over 100 lives, trained 50 service dogs in basic search and rescue, and provided thousands of GPS beacons to families. The Michelle Turner Wilderness Safety Act, inspired by their story, passed in Colorado, requiring basic safety equipment for backcountry camping permits. Jackson often stood at the spot where he'd found the Turners, Chance by his side. The clearing had become something of a pilgrimage site for families who'd been helped by the foundation. The rocks were covered with small mementos, photos, notes, stones from other mountains around the world. Maria stood beside him during one such visit, their wedding rings catching the sunlight. They'd married quietly the previous year, understanding that their broken pieces fit together in a way that made them both stronger. "Any regrets?" she asked. Jackson thought about it. He thought about the nights he couldn't sleep, the therapy sessions, the medication he'd probably take for the rest of his life. He thought about Rex, gone, but never forgotten. He thought about Michelle Turner, whose death had changed so many lives. "No," he said finally. "No regrets. Just gratitude." Chance barked, chasing a butterfly through the wildflowers that now grew in profusion in the clearing. Life persisting, even in a place of death. That evening, the extended family, for that's what they'd all become, gathered at Jackson's cabin for their monthly dinner. Tyler was home from college, full of stories about his emergency medicine rotation. David had been accepted to the Air Force Academy. Lily's book about Rex had been picked up by a publisher. As they sat around the table, Turners, Jackson and Maria, Emma and her new boyfriend, Dr. Martinez and his family, Sarah Chen and her rescue team, Robert raised his glass. "To Michelle," he said as he did every month, "who brought us together. To Rex," Jackson added, "who showed us the way. To family," Tyler said, "however we find it. To second chances," Maria contributed. "To hope," Lily concluded, wise beyond her years. They drank, they laughed, they remembered. Outside, snow began to fall, gentle and peaceful, covering the mountains in a blanket of white. Somewhere out there, families were camping, hiking, exploring. Some would face emergencies, but more would come home safely, thanks to the foundation, Thanks to the dogs they'd trained, thanks to a tragedy transformed into purpose. Jackson looked around the table at these people who'd become his world. In Iraq, he'd lost brothers and sisters in arms. He'd come home broken, convinced his life was over. But Rex had known better. Rex had led him to that clearing, to a family that needed saving, not knowing that Jackson needed saving too. The greatest rescue, Jackson realized, wasn't pulling the Turners from the snow. It was what came after, the choosing to heal together, to build something meaningful from loss, to become a family not bound by blood, but by something stronger, shared purpose, mutual support, and the understanding that sometimes the worst moments in our lives can lead to the most meaningful. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Chance and Hope curled up together by the dying fire. The dogs were the next generation, carrying on Rex's legacy. Tomorrow they'd be back in the mountains, training, searching, ready to save lives. But tonight, they were just dogs, sleeping peacefully, their work done for the day. Jackson cleaned up, Maria beside him, their comfortable rhythm of domesticity still feeling like a miracle. Through the window, the mountains stood silent and eternal, holding their secrets, their dangers, their promises. Rex would be proud, Maria said softly. He would, Jackson agreed. And somewhere, perhaps in whatever place heroes' dogs go, Rex was indeed proud. He'd done what he was trained to do, save his human. That the salvation had involved saving others, that it had created a legacy that would outlive them all, well, that was just bonus. The snow continued to fall, covering the memorial markers, the trails, the clearings where tragedies and miracles had occurred. By morning it would all be white and new, ready for whatever stories the mountains would write next. But the foundation would be ready. The dogs would be ready. The families who'd learned from loss would be ready. Because that's what Rex had taught them all. Heroes aren't people without fear or pain. Heroes are those who act despite their fear, who help despite their pain, who show up when showing up is the hardest thing in the world. And sometimes, heroes have 4 legs, wet noses, and the ability to find people in the snow who desperately need finding.